train to the Plastic Underground. Approaching the station, please stand away from the platform edge. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Plastic Underground. Today I made the original Trident Scanner from Star Trek, the original series. So if you don't know or haven't heard, my brother-in-law will host a weekly podcast where we sit down and discuss an episode of Star Trek every week. And so right now we're in season 2 of the original series, and there's been some pretty cool things in that, and I've wanted to kind of make, and love that like sci-fi retro. So, first of all, check out the Retrek Review show. Sometimes you get gems like this.
To him, like, don't you see he's gonna die? Do something, and then he just keeps staring, and then it's quiet, right? Yeah.
Is this the end for Kirk? Is the Mubatu by too much for the captain? Stay tuned. Come back next week for Private Little War Part 2.
And sometimes we just kind of go off on tangents, and it's pretty funny. But we do a good job of covering the full episode and our thoughts on it. So anyway, this week I made the Trident Scanner from the original series. This bad boy right here. This is all EVA foam. And this was a really fun project to make. And it hits that like retro sci-fi feel that I love, and it looks really great on the shelf. And this will go in the room build at some point, sitting up on the shelf to kind of bring together both worlds of Star Trek and Star Wars. That's kind of my mission personally to do. So yeah, so check out how I made it, and I have patterns for you guys as always on my Facebook page. So let's get to the build. All right, so starting off using my template that I drew. Using some just basic floor mat foam for this project here. This floor mat foam is always kind of my standard go-to for projects. I like always have it on hand, and it's cheap and readily available, and I can pick it up in person. I buy this stuff from Harbor Freight. I don't know if everybody has Harbor Freights, but I think they're pretty common. But anyway, you can buy you get four floor mat foam pieces for like $9, and it's a pretty good deal. There are a lot better foams. Obviously, you guys have seen me use HD foam from SKS Props. And yeah, that stuff is really good. I just always forget to reorder, and I try to save that for, I don't know, I don't want to use like the word like good projects, because like every project can be a good project, but this scanner specifically is just kind of a box, and it has that like 60s feel. So I don't know. I guess I didn't want to use like expensive material for it, but that choice is completely up to you. You can use whatever you like. I really like HD foam. It's very, very nice stuff. So yeah, I cut out the template here, and these side pieces I kind of mark where that corner is going to be, and on the back of the foam I go through and I cut a little V trench out. That way, when you are gluing this foam onto that top piece, you can kind of bend it and match that corner a lot easier. The side pieces here are, the top is thicker and the bottom is thinner. And then this top piece here gets a little curve to it. And this basically makes up the skeleton structure of the scanner. So then I just glue those in place. I go around and just make sure I'm trying to match the seam as flush as I can so that I don't have to do a lot of sanding later. I glue both sides on. And then I decided to glue the top on. My top piece was not 100%. I had this little gap here. And there was also a little gap on the bottom too. So the top piece didn't bother me because there's a panel that goes on top of it. But the bottom piece, I just kind of put a little piece of foam in that gap and sanded it. And yeah, you don't really notice it. I don't know why that happened, but yeah, I guess maybe just cut yours a little bit longer. Or just make sure it fits before you glue it in. Yeah, so then I go around and I really try to smush all the seams together, make sure that it has a really good bond. Then I use some of this Silly Winks foam. This stuff I buy from Hobby Lobby. It's 5mm foam. And I use that to make this viewport. So that was my first attempt. I didn't like it. I kind of made it to match the template I drew, and obviously the template I drew was like from the top down, so it was a different angle, and it made that viewport look a lot smaller. So that's not how it should look. So I redesigned it, and this was the design that I came up with, and this is a lot better. So it's just a triangle pieces get glued on the side, and then the back gets this triangle piece here that has a 45-degree cut on both sides, so it gives you this angle on the back. It just makes this go from what could just essentially be just a square box to kind of this interesting shape, you know. It kind of makes it look like those back corners are cut at at a different degree. Makes it look a little bit more complicated, which is cool. So yeah, I glue those into place, and then I cut out the back plate here. Cut the top of the back plate at a 45 inward so that it butts up to the top of the viewport. But the viewport itself also needed to get a 45 inward cut, so I kind of do that poorly after everything is glued into place, but I marked that on the template so you guys don't have to mess around with that. So you just cut both of those out. It's hard to know what all of your angles need to be when you're working with like paper patterns. When you finally cut stuff out of the foam, you realize like, oh, that's not gonna fit together. So sometimes I do a lot of that stuff on the fly, but I always try to do my best to transfer all that stuff over to the templates. So yeah, there you go. So I glued that back place in place, and that's the viewfinder, I guess I'll call it. You also notice that I did not cut the screen out of the front there. I wanted to make sure I glued it all together and had this sturdy structure together before I cut the screen out. So yeah, then that gets popped right on top there. You can see that's a much better fit, much better design. So then I can move on to a couple of the detail pieces. These are those like L brackets that get glued right underneath the screen. These are just some 5mm foam cut into rectangles, and then a little bit of a thinner rectangle gets glued on top to make up that little shape there. This piece is like a little lever piece that gets glued on the screen. I cut this out of 5mm foam, but then I realized I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. So I glued it to another piece of 5mm foam and cut it out. But again, like I was saying on the templates, I marked that this needs to be a 10mm piece of foam. So you guys do not have to do that. So the other thing I need for the top of the scanner are a couple little switches. So I cut a circle out of 2mm foam, and I glue some scrap 5mm pieces together. This will end up being the bigger switch on the bottom of the scanner. So I glue all those scraps together, and then I draw a circle that I like, and then I just cut every corner off. So if you've ever seen that diagram where a perfect circle fits perfectly inside of a square, this is kind of the same concept. So if you just keep cutting straight lines, you eventually will get a circle shape. So I just cut it out roughly, and then I will use my Dremel and kind of sand it and shape it a little bit better too. And that switch obviously ended up being a little bit too tall for my liking, so I just kind of trimmed it after. This is a piece of clear plastic that was on the back of a vinyl, a roll of vinyl. So I decided to use this. This was cheap on hand, and I cut these angular scores in the back of it and just kind of sand it quick to try to make it a little bit less translucent. So then I go ahead and cut the screen port out. I try to keep the knife parallel to the angle specifically that sits at, and you just kind of go slow and just trying to make that cut look pretty good. So then this piece of plastic can get glued in the back. I go around and mark where it needs to sit. And then I just use a little bit of contact cement on that and just kind of go around and tack it in place to kind of make sure that the screen itself is tight, so that it's not super flimsy sitting in there. And yeah, so that was it. And I ended up not wanting to be as transparent as it was, so I used a little bit of white spray paint, and I sprayed that from the back so that it looks white from the front. And I like that. It's a little bit happier with it. There's supposed to be a light in there. In the show, there's a light. It's like a headlight almost, but I wanted this just to be kind of like a static prop that just sits on the shelf. So I wasn't trying to add lights and all that fancy stuff to it. So that's it. So then that makes up the viewport, and I glue that onto the body. And this is the top detail piece here. This is some 5mm foam again, and I go through and I put all these little score cuts in here. I went through and marked these all first with a pen so that they were all the same width, and I'm just following those markings with my ruler. Then I go ahead and glue this together. I make sure that the top seam is flush when I'm gluing it, and all of the other seams sides and bottoms, they can get trimmed and sanded, and be fine. But that top scene you're gonna see, so I didn't want to sand it or cut it. Then I go ahead and hit that with a heat gun. That will open up those scores that we did with the X-Acto knife, and it'll give you some nice crisp panel lines. You can also see how shiny that is now after hitting it with the heat gun, and that's kind of why you seal foam with the heat gun. It kind of smooths the foam out, and it helps the paint sit on it better, doesn't soak into the foam, and also gives you a like smoother finish. So yeah, it's pretty helpful. It does a lot for you. So I had to go ahead and glue these details on here, that little lever piece and this little switch, the switch at the bottom. I'm just using some super glue. This is some Bob Smith super glue. It's supposed to be formulated for like foam type of stuff. It doesn't melt that insulation foam that I use a lot for like dioramas and stuff. So it's pretty good stuff, and I like it. It doesn't cause like those fumes that you get from other super glue where it heats up too quick and has like a chemical reaction, so that's been nice. I coated it with 4 coats of Plasti Dip. I'm just using some basic gray primer and paint it that gray color. I think in the show it's like a bluish gray, but there's so many like lightings and stuff in the show, it's hard to know. Okay, so working on these actual Trident scanners here, I lost all the footage of making them, so just wanted to kind of show you how I did it and how I failed at it at first. So my first thought was like, oh, so like if I take this piece of PVC pipe and use this for the full piece and put it into the scanner, then I would have this smooth, hard surface that would paint pretty good and look pretty smooth silver. And I thought, like, if I just measured on here and I just cut these segments in here, that it would look pretty good, but it did not. It did not look good at all. So here's a part of it that's left over. See, like I cut like both sides of the PVC pipe to get this like segment look and also keep this round shape, because it's a weird shape. It's like the top and bottom of this are like flat, but then the sides are the same curve as the pipe. So I really did not like the way this looked, and I kind of went back to the drawing board to figure out like what it really needed to be and look like. So the thing that I came up with, and it's in the blueprints, so you'll see it in the blueprints, it's this. This is what I came up with. So these pieces here are 5mm foam. So I use this 5mm foam. There are different sizes, and some of them have a bevel cut to match this bevel shape here. And then in between I used some red what the foam, like 2mm what the foam. And that kind of gets stacked in between to make these segments. And that's just how I did it, and it ended up working pretty good. I glued those together like a little sandwich, and I stuck them on the PVC pipe. I wrapped the PVC pipe in a 2mm foam to thicken up the pipe a little bit and also give it the same foam texture for painting. so that the base isn't like really shiny because it's plastic, and then the top not shiny because it's foam. Then I just added a ring, another 2mm foam ring around the top, and then the actual fin pieces that I glued on, I went through and I sanded all the corners and beveled all the corners to match the circumference of the circle. Alright, so now that those vents are done, kind of how I was showing you how to build those, the actual Trident like prong things. This is how they go. They get glued in there like that. But I need to paint them silver first, so I go ahead and I sealed these with Mod Podge, yeah, I thought they'd make them a little bit smoother, but I didn't put enough coats on because I get lazy, and yeah, so I should have just sprayed these with Plasti Dip too, but that's alright. They're not terrible. I also go through and I tape off this panel here because this also needs to get sprayed silver. I really like the design of this. I like how the front is silver. It kind of breaks up the rest of the gray, and yeah, it's really cool. But I just make sure that I get a good kind of light spray. I'm not trying to soak it, but I'm just trying to get all those panel lines and stuff like coated so that you don't see any of that tan foam underneath. And then the best part is you can unmask it, and you get to see how well you did. Yeah, so then I go ahead and now I can install the fins. You can see how that whole like top piece, now that it's silver, it like completely like sets it apart and really gives you that like sci-fi feel. Again, just using a little bit of that super glue to tack these in place. Then I go ahead and demask the screen. I don't know if I said that during the painting process, but yeah, I put painter's tape on that screen, obviously, so I didn't paint over the white. And then I can go ahead now and I can paint that bottom switch. I paint orange. Some nice safety orange. Then I can paint that top switch a nice safety red. Then I use a little bit of Vallejo silver, and I paint this whole lever on top here silver. And the bases of those switches are also get painted a silver. And yeah, that's it. That is how I made the Trident Scanner from Star Trek, the original series. I really had fun building this. I hope you guys like it, and I hope you use those templates. And I hope to see you next week when we make something kind of similar to this. It's you're gonna see those Trident shapes again, so that'll be fun. So I'll see you guys next time when we make something cool.